Hello everyone, Oddsprite here. Welcome into the studio. This is a track-by-track look into what we had to lose, my musical exploration of the climate crisis. Travel back in time from our worst end result. In the autumn of 2022, the COP of that year was in full swing, and the climate crisis was all over the news and social media. Not long after, I was walking on the Malvern Hills, with the climate crisis playing in my mind. I was looking out over the town below and the beautiful surrounding landscape, thinking how different it might look if our worst climate outcome actually happened. One of the photos I took on that day ended up being the cover art for the single. Being a big nerd, I thought someone travelling back in time to the present day, lamenting about the world we had, would be an interesting take on the topic of climate change. So much of the narrative around climate activism is that of shame. Whilst shame is indeed a powerful motivator, it can also be self-defeating as a call to action. By this song being more of a regretful lament, I thought it might make the topic more palatable and conceptually engaging. Importantly for me as an artist, this was my first song. The lyrics themselves flowed out of me one afternoon. The melody and the actual singing took a little longer. I watched a load of YouTube videos covering the basics of vocal training and practiced for weeks whilst developing the melody for the lyrics. I'm overjoyed with the end result, and it gave me the confidence to release further synth-pop songs. This is a song of many layers, both figuratively and literally. The instruments list is massive. We have drum lab, massive, Massive X, modular icons, analog dreams, FM8, and a battery of other instruments and sounds. The main plugins of note were vocal synth and ozone from Izotope. Over in Logic, the first thing we'll look at is the song's structure. Follows a standard 3-verse, 3-chorus structure with a middle 8 between the final verse and the final chorus. There's also a 16-bar intro. I'm quite fond of my intros, as you may have noticed. The first element of the intro is a piece of ambient material recorded on my iPhone using voice memos. As such, it was recorded in mono and not of particularly high quality, so this has been processed in order to make it fit into the ambience of the track better, and sounds like this. Of note here is a roll-off on the low end. Some compression has been applied to make sure that the gain is more consistent, and the auto gain has been set particularly aggressively. And we also have applied a stereo delay, which is particularly noticeable with the Bird song, to give it a sense of presence. Being a mono recording, otherwise it felt a bit too small scale given the rest of the instruments involved. This is also sent out to a reverb bus. Alongside the ambience, we have our first synth instrument, which is a simple pad, and this is provided by FM8, a frequency modulation synth from Native Instruments, and that sounds like this. That pulsing effect is provided by this tremolo plugin, which is automated to ease in. You can see the depth there decreasing as I go backwards through the track. I used this before I discovered Kilohearts Transgate, and it achieves much the same effect, although less customizable because it only allows for a repetitive rhythm. It's not quite as editable as Transgate in terms of when the notes are on or off during the measure. There's also a channel EQ just rolling off some of the low end so that it doesn't interfere with the bass. The second synth element from the intro comes from Native Instruments Play Series instrument Modular Icons. This was a preset called Area 51, which I made a few tweaks to, and that sounds like this. So as is typical of modular synths, there's a wonderful evolving granular pattern that provides a definitely needed sci-fi ambience, and these two pads work together very well to create that. I can't resist a good build-up. I just can't. I can't help myself. Following that, the bass starts to arrive. Halfway through the introduction, the bass arrives, and this first layer of bass is provided by Native Instruments Super 8, a tweaked preset called Sawdust, which is a nice saw synth bass. I'm not quite sure why that was so much of a tongue twister. And then we transition into the bass in the main verse. And before we leave the intro, we have the drums. Drums for this song are provided by DrumLab. This instrument creates a fantastic fusion between an acoustic drum kit and electronic equivalents. And a lot of the presets have got a wonderful distorted bite to them, for want of a better term. They're just super crunchy. As you can hear. So putting all of those elements together, this is the build-up. As we go into the first verse, you can see that a lot of the synths dip out and get replaced by other elements. We also have some keys joining them. Starting at the top, the first pad is provided by Native Instruments Play Series Analog Dreams. A heavy cut-off phasered synth, providing a lot of movement and depth. The second pad is provided by Super 8, which again is cut off like the Analog Dreams pad, but this one has got a lot of arpeggiated movement. These two are panned to opposite extremes in the left and right channels and complement each other. The other elements at play here are small arpeggios or motifs, although in the case of the second instrument here, I'd struggle to really call it either as I'm only hitting single notes. But over the course of a few bars, it does play a definite melody. The first of these is provided by Massive and is playing a little earworm motif over on the right channel. The second of these is a little more different, provided by an instrument called Razor. The sound that Razor provides here is ethereal, developing, provides a sense of motion, supporting the melody in the other channel. Putting these four elements together, we get the following. Beautiful, slightly haunting. If we add in the drums and the bass, you can hear the full backing for the verse. There's one track here entitled Verse. This was used during recording and contains the melody for the lyrics. That's quite funny. That is so evocative. I could actually hear myself singing the lyrics in the background. As we move through from the verse to the chorus, we have a little transitional effect here. Once in the chorus, we've got another variation on the pads. The same Analog Dreams pad continues from the verse, providing a sense of continuity. We then add in this pad. This is provided by another instrument from the Komplete collection called Kontrol. So a very sharp, piercing sound there, adding a sense of drama, and that is merely rising through the scale. Underpinning and providing the main body for the pads in the chorus, Modular Icons returns with the same preset. Putting the pads together, we get this. I just want to note at this point, clicking through each of these tracks, you can see the vast majority of them have very little to any effects put on them. This emphasizes sound selection over sound manipulation. I always like to pick the right sound for the job. Let's talk about sound selection for a minute. I think there's a prevalence in music production these days to think that you need to have all the effects under the sun in order to be an effective electronic music producer. I completely disagree. I very rarely use effects outside of those in the actual instruments I'm using, be that software or hardware, although these days it is mostly software for me. I think if you have a large palette of sounds available, you will be able to paint any soundscape that you wish to make. I think acquiring or creating a landscape of different sound is one of the best skills or investments you can make for your music production. Moving into the keys for the chorus, we've got another pair of instruments. This instrument called Form provides the main arpeggio. I love how this one sounds on its own, let alone how it sounds in the context of the rest of the song. And the final element of keys for the chorus is provided by rounds. A mind-bending instrument in terms of what it can achieve, but it provides us with this. A simple arpeggio there, consistently evolving. That's one of the benefits of an instrument like rounds, is that the sequencer is so complex you can make it create some absolutely bonkers noises. I think in fairness, I've probably criminally underused its capabilities there. We have a new bass element. Massive X finally appears on the scene with this saw bass. So I've used an arpeggiator here, and this is layered with our previous bass, which is also arpeggiated, which yields this beat. Let's just have a burst of that with the drums, shall we? here's got me thinking I should really do an instrumental. Adding in the keys and the pads, this is the full backing for the chorus. That continues until we get to a small bridge section. This really collapses between the chorus and the verse, just to give a sense of transition. There is one of these bridges between every verse and every chorus, and they vary slightly. So that was the first one, this is the second. So I keep that arpeggiated motif going in the second one to provide an air of urgency and transition into the third and final verse. The last piece of arrangement is the middle 8 here, which follows a different chord progression and adds in an additional element. And this is our synth solo. The sound itself provided by Modular Icons. I particularly liked this sound at this point in the track. It gave a sense of unraveling almost, and things spinning out of control. The drum arrangements throughout are fairly standard rock synth pop drum beats. There's the verse. Gets a bit of power up in the chorus with a fall to floor. A bit of ride there to take us through the bridge, and the middle 8. Where the hi-hats get some love. I created a separate kick track here, so it was easier to provide side chaining with certain elements in the track, most of them being the bass. Moving on to the vocals, I used my standard practice of recording about 7 or 8 takes of each of the verses and the chorus, using Logic Pro's quick comping functionality to create a final comp, tuning the vocals with Melodyne and then bouncing those out to the final audio, which sounds like this.
Visit the past, seeing a gust, how lush was the earth.
And the chorus.
Pollute the skies, the temperatures rise, can we breathe without trees?
Now let's go through the vocal effect stack. I used Nectar from Izotope, starting with some additional pitch correction. I wasn't very confident of the vocals in this track at the time, being the first that I'd properly sung, and I felt like I needed to really leverage pitch correction. As it turns out, and what I've learned since, is that I would have been better off doing additional takes and practice rather than trying to lean on the tech. Primary EQ, looking for problematic frequencies. The de-esser, appropriately configured to remove additional sibilants. I do think in this particular track, I could have done a better job in being a bit more aggressive on the sibilants. This EQ is here to provide a bit of air to the vocal. The first compressor to tame the transients. The second compressor to provide dynamic consistency. A tube emulation saturation plugin for some warmth, and the harmony module that gets enabled during the chorus. If we do a quick comparison between the end of the verse moving into the chorus, you'll see the effect this provides.
A glacial pace, human disgrace, a tainted rebirth. Pollute the skies, the temperatures rise, can we breathe without trees?
Now, in isolation, that sounds a little insane. However, context is always king. It's what it sounds like in the mix that counts.
Human disgrace, a tainted rebirth. Pollute the skies, the temperatures rise, can we breathe without trees?
However, we're not done with the vocals yet. I added a few additional vocal layers using vocal synth from Izotope. This primarily takes effect during the chorus. You can see the mix levels there change significantly, and the width changes too. Playing these in isolation.
A glacial pace, human disgrace, a tainted rebirth. Pollute the skies, the temperatures rise. Can we breathe without trees?
That is a big and weird vocal sound, which is exactly what I wanted. The last thing on the vocal track is a final bit of compression, and the whole effect in the mix sounds like this.
Death is the frontier. Pollute the skies, the temperatures rise. Can we breathe without trees?
Mixing and balancing this track was particularly problematic due to all of the layers and instruments being used. Aggressive use of EQ to tame interactions between the instruments and aggressive panning definitely helped. The last state of production, as you would expect, is the mastering. On this track, I ended up having to cut some of the mids because of the number of synths that I'd layered. The mids were just too full. So in order to balance the track, I had to take a chunk out of the middle. I wanted quite a punchy low end here, so I dialed up the impact module in terms of the low end and the low mids. Very little changed in terms of the stereo image, just a few tweaks. Dynamic EQ is here to tame problem frequencies, and the maximizer. Ozone has got quite a useful feature which allows you to do gain matching when doing a before and after using the bypass button. So I'll just do that now for a few bars so you can hear the difference that the mastering is making to the tone of the music.
Such more concern, slow the lands burn, death is the frontier. Pollute the skies, the temperatures rise. Can we breathe without trees? All we can do, there's no stopping you. Though it's tough, not enough.
You can hear there that the low end and the high end really come to life. Disabling gain matching for our final A/B test, here's the difference the mastering makes.
Such more concern, slow the lands burn, death is the frontier. Pollute the skies, the temperatures rise. Can we breathe without trees? All we can do, there's no stop.
Quite a difference. And that's the end. It's time to leave our past and go back to the future. Thanks for watching. Until next time.